Thank you, thank you. Thank you.
African-American James Howard Meredith was born in 1933 in the state of Mississippi. James was intelligent and got good grades in school, but he was denied the freedoms and advantages white Americans enjoyed because of his skin color. Believing the Declaration of Independence, which states all men are created equal, James wanted to attend the University of Mississippi, nicknamed Ole Miss. The problem was Ole Miss was for whites only, but James felt that regardless of his skin color, he had the right to be a student there. He applied to the university twice for admission and was denied both times. He took his case to court, and after a long legal battle, the United States Supreme Court ruled that it was unconstitutional for him to be denied entrance to Ole Miss. On October 1st, 1962, James Meredith became the first African-American student at the University of Mississippi. A crowd of white students and segregationists, white people who felt blacks should be kept separate from whites, gathered at the university to protest. Things turned violent. 2 people were killed and many were injured. The President of the United States, John F. Kennedy, eventually ordered up to 30,000 troops to restore order at Ole Miss. After the rioting stopped, James was still treated unkindly by some students as he continued his education at Ole Miss. They would make noise all night long, so he would have a hard time studying and sleeping. When he would enter a room, students would turn their back and ignore him. It was a difficult time for James, but he persisted and graduated with a degree in political science. Even though James had won the battle to attend Ole Miss, he didn't stop fighting discrimination against African Americans and spent the remainder of his life standing up for equal rights.
Okay, now we'd like to begin our questions for Mr. Meredith. They will be facilitated by 2 of our Calhoun students, Ms. Mary Bodart and Mr. Wayne Riggins. Ms. Mary will ask the first question, Mr. Meredith. Now, if any of these questions, if you do not like them, just do not answer them. Say pass. We will not be offended because it is just so great for you to be here.
Amen.
All right.
Well, first of all, I'd like to say thank you on behalf of all of us here at Calhoun, the students especially, for giving us this opportunity of hearing about your life and your triumphs and everything else. So thank you. My first question is, when did you first realize that black people in America were not treated equally to white people? And what made you choose the University of Mississippi as the vehicle to initiate change?
Thank you. Before I can really answer that, you got to put things in perspective. I've lived a pretty long time. Been all over the world, but I've never experienced anything like I've experienced this morning. And I have to say, if it wasn't going to be in Mississippi, Alabama is absolutely the place for it to be. At least by the age of 4, God had directed me on my mission. And at that time, it was clear to me, and it has been clear every day since, that I was to build a different reality. At that time, I could only think of a city. I'm from the country. And the county seat, one of the biggest towns in Mississippi at the time, was Kosciuszko. And at age 4, I didn't know what city was going to be like that I was going to rebuild, but I knew it was going to be different from what I saw in Kosciuszko. And I'm not going to try to say what's happened here today, but it's really, this is something here today. But at least by the age of 5, I went to my first, they used to call them not religious revivals, but every year after laying off time, when they laid the crops by, they had religious program a whole week, where what they call it?
Morning band.
Camp meeting.
No, you all big time. We got revival. That's it, right? And the same lady, born in slavery, Miss Polly Pierce, I will never forget her name. Every service, she opened the service. That was her privilege. And she always opened the service with the same song, Must Jesus Bear the Cross Alone, and all the world go free. No, there's a cross for everyone, and there's a cross for me. And I ain't never felt like I wasn't on God's mission to bear my cross. Now, I tried for most all of my life to hide that, because I didn't want nobody to think I thought I was a religious person trying to do God's will. But when Ole Miss, I guess it's just now starting to pay off as to why this exists. After I went to Ole Miss, some of the best writers and researchers in America went to my little county and talked to everybody in the county, particularly anybody that knew anything about me or my family. And the biggest book written about Ole Miss and James Meredith was by the #1 professor now, can't think his name, but he got the biggest chair at Ole Miss, the biggest pay and the biggest title. He wrote this book, and he talked to everybody that ever could know me. And he ran into one doctor who said that at age 12, I came to his office. My mother brought me to his office, and he'd been a football star at Ole Miss and had his picture up on the wall. And that's why I wanted to go to Ole Miss, because I wanted to do what he done, be a big star. And God knows he was right about that, even though I tried to hide it. I always wanted to be a big man, you understand? So I always wanted to do something that needed done that everybody else couldn't do or was scared to do. So, and I'd be lying if I didn't say that wasn't the truth, but I tried to cover it up, you know. So that would be the way I would have to answer that. At age 4, I wanted to change what I saw every day of my life. I didn't want to live in that circumstance. And that never left me at all. So, but the last time I spoke at a college in Alabama, I believe it was Drake. It was right. I told him that Alabama was Mississippi before it was Alabama. And them PhDs got mad at me and whispered in my ear I was lying. But of course, they went and checked the records. Of course, I was right. So there's a real connection between Alabama and Mississippi. If it wasn't for Mississippi, Alabama would be close to the bottom. So I'm talking about the black-white race thing. Most people would like to pretend it don't exist, but it exists. It ain't never not existed. And so I guess I better say this now before he get a chance to trip me up. I'm on my last mission from God now. And thank God you all had the good sense to get me a soft, comfortable chair. Thank you.
Once I get morning, your college experience was not typical, to say the least. Would you please describe your normal day and routine as a student while at the university?
I heard student, but I don't know what your question was. Yeah, John?
Your college experience was not usual. It was not typical. Could you describe what an average day for you was like at Ole Miss?
I promised God I wasn't going to lie no more. Now, you all, I know when you get old, people like to think of you being a nice person. I wasn't. I mean, somebody mentioned, I think it was the president, that if it wasn't him, it was somebody before me, that I considered myself a warrior, a fighter, not a good guy. Now, everybody talk about them calling me names and all of that at the university, and nigger go home. But nobody talked about me breaking shins in the in the little walkway. You know, we had to go to get our mail, and the walkway was much thinner than that, both ways. You know, I mean, so every time I walked down there to get my mail, I broke me a shin. You understand? Because I had all them United States Marshals and police, Army people backing me up. You understand? I was not a nice person. I was really a warrior. And I was at war. And so I hope I'm better now that I'm on God's last mission.
Thank you.
While the issues at Ole Miss made you a household name, fewer people may know of your heroic walk against fear in 1966. Could you please explain what initiated the march?
Quite frankly, the march had been in planning many years. Actually, we give credit to certain eras of blacks. But actually, the engineer of both the Ole Miss thing and the Meredith March was my father, who paid a much bigger price than I could ever pay to move and advance our situation. So the fear was and still remains the biggest factor in the manipulation and control of human beings. My daddy knew that all my life, and actually I knew it. And frankly, I was in the United States Air Force. I got discharged in 1955, came back, not to do the march, not to integrate Ole Miss, but to break the system of white supremacy. And that was the same year, the Supreme Court decision of 1955, where they say you can proceed with all deliberate speed. And my father thought the timing was wrong. It wasn't a good time to start fighting white folks in Mississippi because they was lynching like mad back in 55 and in that time period. So I went back in the military, spent another 5 years, and we planned the March Against Fear for years because we knew that was the thing that kept blacks from doing what they were entitled to do, was the fear of being not just lynched, but you understand, losing their home, losing their property, losing their job. Fear is a powerful force. So actually, the March Against Fear, of which Dr. King actually did most of the leading because I was lucky enough to get shot and not get killed. So I walked 22 miles, he walked 200 miles. So that just shows how good God is, how lucky I've been. In my life. But the most important thing I've ever done was the March Against Fear. And actually, what really happened from that, most people are not aware of. That's what led to blacks. I just talk about Mississippi because I'm scared of the rest of the state. Mississippi has the largest number of black elected officials. But you understand, it was the March Against Fear that produced all of that. And it was because it was Mississippi that I launched my attack against. You understand, Mississippi even today has the reputation of being the worst in terms of lynching, in terms of every other thing than any other state. You understand, I was pretty smart. And believe you me, I knew what all that stuff meant. And I knew if I attacked Mississippi, even if I didn't win, it would make an impact. And then it looked like I won. In fact, I kicked Mississippi's butt. You understand that? Now you understand, Mississippi was smart enough not to talk about it. But the only way I can see it, they brought in, as they said in that movie, over 30,000 troops. We talking about more troops than they had in Vietnam at the time, in Korea, in Germany, anywhere. They brought in the 101st Airborne, the 82nd Airborne. Those are the top fighting troops in America. They were there in full force. They whooped Mississippi and occupied it. But Mississippi is so smart, Everybody talking about how dumb white folks are in Mississippi. They're the smartest in the world. They kept the whole world from knowing that the United States brought the military in there, occupied their butt while I went to school a whole year. Mississippi is smart. And but you understand, and you got to understand, I'm going to shut my mouth, but I'm trying to stress how important the March Against Fear. Now, Dr. King knew that. I mean, that's why he took it over. He had to take it over, he said, because we had attacked who everybody was scared of. Mississippi, I didn't have sense enough to be scared. I mean, because at 4 years old, when you say you got to rearrange this thing, and God keep telling you that's what you got to do, like this gentleman sitting over here wasn't 4, but he was 6. And you all in Huntsville like he is. But it was Huntsville that his daddy and mama put him through the hassle. And we like to blame and credit the individual. I guarantee you, it not only was his daddy and mama, it was a whole family, a whole community. So to solve our problems today, and I hate to make you keep waiting, but to solve our problems today, we got to go back to the basics. And the basics is our religious foundation. That's the only thing that enabled me to go to Ole Miss, was my religious foundation. What is the religious foundation? Being taught good and bad, right and wrong, and how to apply it to life. And we are not doing that now. We're not teaching our children good and bad, right and wrong, and how to apply it to life. And we wonder why they do wrong. I'm going to shut up now and leave it.
So years later, Ole Miss embraced you. They erected a statue. Was that a fulfilling moment, or did you see it as one step in the long struggle?
Now, most people across America have not really kept up with what Mississippi is doing. You're absolutely correct. And you know, when they put the statue up, they're promoting it now all over the world. But when they put it up, I said it's a false idol, take it down. If you really want to do something, take down the James Meredith statue in the back of the Lyceum, the main building on campus. Take down the Confederate statue that guard the front end, and we'll do away with that black-white race thing in Mississippi. They say, hell no. We didn't put that up to honor you. We put that up to appease these blacks who are up here now, because we can't not have them up here now, so that they, whenever they have problem, they go out there and look at that statue. As a matter of fact, for one whole year, and this fascinated me more than anything, one black student sat out there every day for a year, rain, sleet, or shine. I mean, and that proved the point that this administrator told me, as to it wasn't up there for you, James Meredith, and we ain't gonna take it down. But now, in December, Mississippi did something else. they paid more money for what they call a historical museum and a civil rights museum, and they had President Donald Trump come to Mississippi and dedicate the Civil Rights Museum. Mississippi is smart, I'm telling you. Ain't no other museum now in America that matter. Only the one in Mississippi. And weekend after next, after next, because Trump came and John Lewis and Benny Thompson and the Mayor Jackson, oh, we ain't gonna go to that museum and Trump there. But guess what's gonna be happening the 23rd and 24th? Mississippi featuring Benny Thompson, John Lewis, and the Mayor Jackson. They're gonna rededicate. You understand that? And what Mississippi has really done, and I don't care that they know, I done peep their game. Mississippi been at the bottom. Mississippi is the only state ain't had a 2% raise in population in 100 years. But they want to change that, and they got to change the image of Mississippi. So Mississippi had decided that they're going to have a cutoff point. The cutoff point going to be from 1963. That's when the three civil rights workers was killed in Neshoba County, Mississippi. And 1968, that's when the last major civil rights bill was passed. That's the civil rights era. So there's going to be a Mississippi before the civil rights era and a Mississippi after. And the Mississippi after going to make Mississippi, it's going to move it up above Arkansas, I ain't going to mention Alabama, Louisiana. So Mississippi won't be at the bottom no more in another 2 years, mark my word. I mean, they will be moved up in this black-white thing. So I'm going to shut my mouth.
Mr. Meredith, of the two experiences integrating Ole Miss and the Walk Against Fear, which do you feel was the most meaningful?
Absolutely, the March Against Fear. You got to understand, Ole Miss was strictly a strategy and an assault on white supremacy worldwide. But Mississippi was the symbol of white supremacy. And they had made the point clear in 1964 when they killed those 3 civil rights leaders, 2 white and 1 black. And this is the thing that most people need to know. One of the mothers of one of the white tried for years to make the point that if those 2 boys hadn't have been white, the whole issue wouldn't have amounted to much or nothing. And they would not listen to her at all. But I'm going to tell you how you support her position. When they were looking, you know, it was about 6 weeks after they killed them, before they found them in the bottom of this dam. The military, or the government, called out a whole Navy unit. They searched every water way in Neshoba County, Mississippi. They found 29 black bodies. But they were decided they wasn't going to even identify who they were. Like their mamas and daddies didn't need to know. You understand? The only one that was important was the one that was in the news. But don't you understand, anybody that get killed and disappear, they're important to somebody. But they decided that they wasn't even important enough. No, we ain't gonna even identify them. We, we'll put it in the record that we found them. So whenever you, can use this special law to get FBI records, you'll find out that we discovered, when we were looking for them 3, we discovered 29 others, but we decided they wasn't important enough to even identify who they were. So I keep saying I'm gonna stop giving long answers, and I'm gonna just give yes and no answers from now on.
So, how was it to work in the struggle of the civil rights? How was it to work in the struggle of the civil rights movement with other major leaders like Dr. Martin Luther King, Mr. Stokely, Carmichael, amongst others?
Be quite frankly, they always said that I was a loner. To a large extent, there's some truth to it. The only one of the civil rights leaders, there really was 2, Medgar Evers, but he was in Mississippi. But the only one nationally that I ever had a conversation with was Dr. King. But my thinking was different. I was an individualist because I wanted to influence and change the life for every black and white in America. And I knew, just like Malcolm X, when you get tied to one group, you can't go beyond that. And even Dr. King, tied to one group, when I got shot, all of the groups came to Memphis to my hospital room. And the Urban League and the NAACP, when I made the statement, they couldn't decide who was going to be the big dog. When they come to me to answer that question, I said Dr. King would be the big dog. The NAACP and the Urban League got up from the side of my bed and went and caught the plane back. Now, you understand, so I never wanted to be tied down to any group. That was my reasoning, because everybody said James Meredith crazy. I know y'all heard that even over here in Alabama. I mean, I don't even remember your question.
Oh, man. I was saying, what was the struggle of the movement, being part of it with Dr. King and Mr. Carmichael?
Oh, well, okay. Well, I'll say this about Stokely. And I ain't just bragging. God told me I can say it if it's the truth. Yes, sir. Yes, sir. There were 3 things in order to continue the march. And James Meredith never participated in the Meredith March, because a march is a protest. And I had the concept that the highest office in American structure was citizen. So the president of the United States wasn't big enough for me to protest to. As a citizen, I was more important than him, because as a citizen, I had the right to select him. So he worked for me, not the other way around. Now, what James Meredith started from Memphis to Jackson was a walk against fear. A walk is an exercise of your right and privilege to use the highways and byways to move from one place to another. A march is a protest saying to somebody else, you're not doing me right, do me better, give me more. And I could never, there was nobody in the world big enough for James Meredith to ask for anything because I was a citizen. And that's the highest office in America. So, I don't know, I tried to answer your question.
This is the last one. Your last book, A Mission from God, issues a challenge to America. Will you tell us what that challenge is today?
Absolutely. Thought you were never going to ask. And I promised God I was going to go to every county in the state of Mississippi and deliver this message. As a matter of fact, since we have a captive audience, I'm going to read real fast the whole thing. Because before starting over here, there are 82 counties in the state of Mississippi. And I went to Carroll County, probably the most rural county in the state of Mississippi. Definitely, this was the most country church existing. And these are the words that I am supposed to deliver. The Bible Society Awakening Movement. The purpose is to teach everyone in Mississippi God's law, the Ten Commandments. The goal is to get every Christian in Mississippi to take responsibility for reaching out to other church members as well as to families and children who are not church members. I will say in Mississippi, I ain't gonna say nothing about Alabama. Every black church in the city of Jackson with the name Greater, that means it done got big time now, that was there when I went to Jackson in 1960 to attend Jackson State University, have become like the old white country club. They not only hire guards every Sunday to keep them local community people from breaking in their car. Don't think about coming in messing up that pretty red carpet that they got. Lord have mercy, God did not authorize me to say that. The plan is to instill good and right values in all segments of society. God's message for our time. Christians must work to fulfill the covenant with God. 4,000 years ago, God called Moses his first prophet to the top of Mount Sinai and gave him the Ten Commandments. God told Moses to have the elders learn them, live them, and teach them to all the people. 2,000 years ago, God sent his son, Jesus Christ, to fulfill God's law, the Ten Commandments. Christians should do no harm by avoiding all evil. Christians should do good to all people. Christians should attend to all of the business of God. And the last speech Dr. King made before he was killed the next day, he acknowledged through the whole speech that he had failed in the last few years to do all of God's business. And he promised that as long as he lived, whether it was a short time or a long time, from then on, he was going to do God's will. Thank you. Thank you, and I have never been treated with this specialty. I have to say, it sure feels good.
Okay, thank you very much, Mr. Meredith. My goodness, we are in the presence of greatness. Let's give ourselves one more round of applause here at Calhoun Community College. We have a special commemorative plaque that we would like to present to Mr. Meredith at the moment. And our very own Dr. Wayman Burke will present that plaque to him.
Good morning. Before we do that, I know that Dr. Klauber has a special presentation that he would like to make to Mr. Meredith before the plaque.
Mr. Meredith, one of our students penned this on her own, and one of her inspirations was one of your quotes. And that quote is, "My answer to the racial problem in America is not to deal with it at all. The founding fathers dealt with it when they made the Constitution." And that quote...
Is she here?
Is she here, Susan? No, she could not be here today, but Dr. Susan Locascio, one of our department heads at Decatur campus, she was responsible for getting this together, and we'd like to give this to you. Thank you.
Well, thank you. That's fantastic.
Thank you again, Mr. Meredith. You know, one of my favorite quotes is, there are three types of people. I always push this in class.
Wow.
People who make things happen, people who watch things happen, and people who wonder what happened. You don't want to be in the latter category. But you're a man who made things happen. And so you've stood on the front lines of history, and you're one of the major figures of most of our lifetimes. And we appreciate you coming here to Huntsville. I would like to ask these three students to come up with me to present you this plaque. Come on up, guys. This is presented to Mr. James H. Meredith in grateful appreciation for your outstanding commitment to civil rights of all citizens. February 12, 2018. Thank you, sir.
Thank you.
Mr. Meredith does have a couple of books if anybody would like to purchase them. They're $50. They do take, I think, MasterCard or debit cards. And out here if anyone would like a copy. Thank you.
And I should say this, 3 years in Mississippi, some of you real studious people may know that Dr. James Silver wrote Mississippi, the Closed Society. He was also president of the Southern Historical Association for 25 years. And he said the best book ever written about the South was 3 years in Mississippi by James Meredith. So I just thought I'd throw that in.